All right, welcome back to another episode of Sky U Pod. Figured we get a quick show in here, Max, as everyone's waiting for the college football playoff game. So we are going to do picks. So maybe even before anything, first of all, how are you? Second of all, who do you got in tonight's Notre Dame versus Penn State matchup? Just so we get our picks in here before the deadline of kickoff.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Staying warm. It's been pretty chilly, but wasn't expecting the snow today, so that was a nice little
Right.
surprise. But yeah, tonight, Notre Dame and Penn State. It should be a physical game. Should be low scoring. Two pretty good defenses, both with good ground games. But I think I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I think they are a slight favorite still right now. I'd probably take them to cover two. Just I don't know. Penn State. I just feel like they haven't quite proved it yet, and it's really not even to their own. It's not like it's their fault. Like they've had a pretty decent, you know, getting to play SMU and Boise State as your playoff games, and maybe it's just because I'm just coming off of seeing Notre Dame beat Georgia, but yeah, I don't know. It just feels like Notre Dame kind of has that second or third gear, whereas Penn State, they kind of just wear teams down a little bit, and by the end, they kind of are just coasting in anyways. Whereas I feel like I don't think they can really do that against a Notre Dame team that's going to be punching right back.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to take Penn State, and it's just a gut feeling, to be honest. I don't have a lot of rationale behind it. I think it's just because I trust them to make more explosive plays. And I know I'm saying that after Notre Dame just ran a kickoff back against Georgia last week, but I just think Tyler Warren in the passing game is going to get them more consistent chunk plays than maybe Notre Dame's going to be able to find. Could be dead wrong on that, but I'm going to take the Nittany Lions and hope for a Big Ten versus Big Ten national championship game. But the Gophers did have their own bowl game this past. Let's see here. Dave just chimes in. You guys ever talk about women's or men's basketball? Mostly women's right now. I don't think anyone wants to talk about men's. Fire, Ben. Listen, Dave, I've watched Gopher basketball. Unfortunately, I don't pay super close attention to the women's program. I just know it's in a better state than the men's, as you alluded to. But we not enough. I don't feel like I want to talk about it enough on a podcast, especially with the state it's in. I know that's a bandwagon fan thing, but I do watch basketball games. It's just not something I necessarily want to put on the pod. Not at this time, anyway. Maybe in the future. Maybe if there's someone else out there that wants to use the pod to talk basketball, we can look into that. But this time we're gonna remain with Gopher football. But appreciate you asking. Yeah, Gopher bowl game, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Max, Gophers won it 24-10. I believe it was 10, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Honestly, like any initial thoughts on that game, how it went? I thought even though we went down 7-0, it was pretty evident that we were the dominant team just off the get go. I thought our defensive line really showed out. Thought Anthony Smith was very noticeable. I thought Kerry Brown had a very strong game as well. And then the offense pulled out a bunch of different surprises really and early and often. So that was kind of made it a little bit more entertaining as well. But Max Brosmer closed out a nice game. Elijah Spencer, just what are your initial thoughts, overall thoughts on that bowl game?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a fun one to watch. It's a fun way to end the season, right? When you can just end on a nice, easy win. It became apparent, second half of the game that Virginia Tech just probably really wasn't in it, and they're missing a lot of guys to the portal and things like that. So it's tough. Um, but yeah, I mean, they just looked like they were just playing loose, having more fun. Like you said, the
Yeah.
offense was running some trick plays early and often, which was kind of cool to see. And then at the end there too, the fake QB sneak, little
Yeah.
pop pass to the tight end. That's a great way to end the game. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those where it's like, man, I wish we could just play like this the whole season, but it's really not realistic when you're kind of playing a JV squad, and it's
Having
really for fun.
right, and having two quarterbacks on the field at the same time when
Yeah,
neither of them is really a threat
right.
to carry the ball around. That was funny.
Yeah,
I do like the play of how Brosmer, they kind of ran like the reverse, like toss back to Brosmer, and he has Lindsey keep going into the flat, and he was wide open, but he's just like, "What are you gonna do?" And
yeah.
shot elsewhere down the field, but that was great to see. Um, Shout out Elijah Spencer, right? His last game gets player of the game in Charlotte, back where it started for him. So that was cool to see. Dave says, I like the play of our young wide receivers. I agree, Dave. I thought Nuke Hayes, couple catches he got looked good. Lanier got out there as well. I thought I don't know if he actually had a catch in the game, but I thought he looked sharp out there. He was knocking people over. I think it was New Case that threw that huge hit on the safety, wasn't it? I think it was him, but I could be wrong on that. Uh, and then Lemecki went out there and did his thing as well. So you have all three of those guys competing for spots next year, and it's looking good there. I actually thought, I know he gave up a sack in like his third play, but I liked the freshman tackle, Roy. I thought he looked good his first few plays in there. I know the sack ended up happening, but it's his first time playing that level of football, so I cut him some slack there. But I thought he looked good. Jackson Howard on the D line got a lot of playing time. So any other young guys that you saw, Max, that we didn't shout out yet?
I guess not really a young guy, but it was kind of cool to see Jaron Mangum have a pretty good game too, as the RB
Yeah,
two behind Darius, and just to give him a little bit of a spell at times. And I mean, for being a big body running back, I mean, he gets downhill, and I don't know. I kind of wish we could have him for one more year just to have
yeah,
that extra depth there. But yeah, just a shout out to him too. Just a good way to end your
yeah.
season, and probably because Mangum's done, right? That was
Yeah,
his
that was a 6th year guy,
yeah,
had one more year of eligibility and came here and yeah, cool way to go
yeah,
out that those guys got
right.
their shiny moment. Um but
I guess
yeah,
another guy, a guy we've seen, but like I mean, Jamison Gears is still seems like he's going to be a pretty good receiving target at tight end. Um, and I know he'd had some bright moments during the season, but
yeah.
seems like could be a potential receiving threat that we haven't had in a while.
Right. He looked sharp. I'm glad you shouted him out. The young guy behind him, and now I'm blanking on his name, actually got in there and got that first target of the game for the tight ends. He dropped it, but he played a decent amount this game as well. He got mixed in there with Callerup. So yeah, I think the tight end room could be a little bit of they got athletes in there. They could have some receiver threats in there going into next season. Dave says, I would kind of like to see the second string quarterback come back in. At the time, I didn't really care if we won or lost the game. Yeah, I get that, and I hear you. That's kind of what makes these bowl games still more fun for fans, is seeing these young guys and what you kind of got going in the future, especially when you're playing on January 3rd, like the Gophers did, right? Like you're a month removed from the season, over a month removed from your last regular season game, and so it's almost like a whole different year altogether. But it is, like PJ said, a celebration of the year you just had. So you can't, when Brosmer opts in, Daniel Jackson, it sounds like, was actually trying to get healthy enough to go in this game, but they deemed it wasn't really worth it for him to try and rush a comeback from, it sounds like, a minor cleanup surgery potentially at the end of the year to get back. So when you got guys like that gave a lot to the program and want to play, I don't blame the coaches for just letting them go out and play, right? Like Quinn Carroll, I think, played the whole game again at left tackle just because of the guys we had out, and did a great job. So I hear what you're saying, Dave. I do, but I think the coaches handled it right. You got a mix of young guys in there. Lindsey did get to throw the ball. It wasn't a lot, but yeah, it was nice to see.
Yeah. And with the Darius Taylor touchdown pass, that was not on the bingo card.
I thought for sure he was going to get player of the game just from
Yeah.
passing the ball, a couple catches, finished with over 100 yards rushing, I believe. So good to see a healthy Darius. And yeah, I know it was Virginia Tech's backups, but yeah, the line of scrimmages, both of them have a chance to be good next year. I know the offensive line is going to be young, but I think they got a lot of promise on both sides of that, in both sides of the trenches. So got that to look forward to. There was a couple new portal news. We'll get to that now, Max. Coleman Bryson, who we had been kind of trying to campaign for, is taking over that Jack Henderson role next year. He did opt into the portal. I believe he's got 2 years of eligibility left. And then the young defensive tackle from Prior Lake, Martin Owusu, I believe is how you say it. I don't have it up in front of me. Yeah, Owusu. he opted in the portal as well. That to me was a little bit more disappointing, just because young D tackles that he had options too out of high school. So to lose one only a couple years in, it's tough for those guys, right? Because they got a lot of competition coming in every year through the transfer portal, and it also a spot where you have to spend time building yourself up physically to be able to go out there and play. So kind of a tough deal there, but he did opt to the portal. Just any initial thoughts there on those guys?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, losing Coleman Bryson, a guy who played significantly, is tough. But at the same time, it makes sense when when he looks around at the room. You've got Coy, Kerry Brown, and probably McMillan for kind of that
Yeah,
nickel corner spot. He's probably looking around, going, "I better put on some weight and just play outside linebacker," because it's kind of what's left for him.
right.
So it makes sense, but it sucks because he was a solid player at the safety position. And yeah, for Owasu, I mean, in general, you'd love to have the depth at D line. Hopefully, that's, I don't know, maybe a good sign that the guys we brought in are going to play significantly or kind of take over that, whatever role he was in. And he maybe saw the writing on the wall and decided to, find an opportunity elsewhere. I have no idea, but yeah, it stinks from a depth perspective, but not really having the known commodity in him, it's good luck, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The one nice thing about it being a younger guy is that if you weren't expecting a lot from him the next year, then you have time to go out and find the replacement, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's something there. But
And
yeah,
we do already have a pretty highly touted D tackle, no?
yes,
From
the
South
transfer.
Dakota.
Yeah. Well,
Not even the
in the
transfer,
class.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I don't have their recruiting class up in front of me, so I'm not even going to try to remember his name, but I do know who you're talking about. Yeah, we do have a couple D tackles coming in, so it is what it is. I'm sure the coaches probably had an idea of this well in advance. So, just other portal news, I guess, that we could just bring up so people know we're paying attention to is it looks like we've offered a few linebackers here. We've offered, well, one, the edge from Texas, and then we've offered an Oklahoma State running back. Keep saying running back, an Oklahoma State linebacker. And now I just saw another one here before we jumped on. I believe it was an outside linebacker from Texas State or something like that. But he was also getting looked at by, I believe, like Ole Miss and such. So they clearly want a linebacker. It's what we've been kind of advocating for at this point. I think they'd take another corner too. And they've offered a couple more edge guys. So I think another D end linebacker corner is what the coaches would ideally like. Just because of the portal, the time to enter into the portals ending soon doesn't mean the coaches can't keep recruiting the guys that are in there. So who knows? I won't expect anything super crazy at this point as far as getting someone. I'm not sure if there's any like huge name out there that we could bring in that really shock us, unless I don't know, is Carson Beck coming here now? He just jumped in the portal today, but that'd be something. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're in a good spot just with how it's hope, assuming we don't lose anything major here going in. But there's always that spring portal window again, so we'll see.
Yeah. That's the hard part. It's like, do you want them now, knowing that they could have the opportunity to jump right back in and you're just going to lose them anyways? Or do you want them later? You know that they're locked in, but they are
Yeah,
joining later in the process and getting acclimated with the team and everything. It's kind of a mess.
yeah, I
But
hear what you're saying. I think you want them now because I think now when they signed, I think that is some like a hurdle to overcome. Like it sounds like that's what
sure.
maybe is going on with that Wisconsin corner that is trying to enter the portal to go to Miami but isn't being released. This Wisconsin fans claimed online is that he signed his NIL, re-upped it, and then jumped into the portal, and they think he was tampered with, so they want to prove that, but they also want their money back. Allegedly, this is Wisconsin fans what they're saying online. So I don't know that. I'm just once they actually sign that NIL deal, it's a lot harder for them to just freely go. So,
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
but yeah, no, like it's one thing, right? Like it's great when those guys like come here and stay, but like it's guys that you haven't even heard about, right? Like if all of a sudden Kerry Brown gets an offer for 2 mil, like I know he re up, but it's guys you weren't really worried about beforehand that now might go. That's what I worry about more with the spring portal, at least, is new guys jumping ship. But
Right.
oh well,
Yeah.
I think we'll be all right. All
Yeah.
right, Max. This brings the season to a close. The 2024 season is over. I want you to put on your teacher's cap. You always wanted to be a teacher. I'm just kidding. Let's go through, you know, defense, offense, special teams, end it with the grade out of just how you think this season went. I think we'll start with the most positive things about the team. So for me, I think that means we should start with the defense. We can start with that side of the ball. How do you think Corey Heatherman did, and just what were your general thoughts on the defense this year?
Yeah. Overall, I mean, definitely pleased. We'd gotten used to Joe Rossi and having solid defenses, but it was very much bend but don't break. And at times, if it was breaking, there was no there was no counter to it. Like there was
Right.
no plugging the hole if things were falling apart. Um, but with Heatherman's defense, it felt like we were creating a lot more pressure. The run game was a lot stronger, and we were able to change things up if something wasn't working. It felt like in game we were able to make those adjustments and kind of punch back on some of these offenses. So definitely a plus there. The big concern coming in the year overall, I think, was the safety position. Ended up being one of the positions we were most confident in. So that's definitely a huge plus, especially with a lot of young guys and Coy. And yeah, I think just being as balanced as they were, right? I mean, pass defense, run defense, third down situations, red zone. I mean, overall, a pretty solid defense. I actually looked up their efficiency numbers. We did finish in the top 10th. We were top 10 in defensive efficiency overall, and that's adjusted for competition. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty bright spot, especially when it was going to be a concern coming in to the season.
Yeah, I think looking at the defense, I thought they just got better and better as the year went on. I know the turnovers dried up a little bit as the year went on, but to me, that's something that you can't always control. If a team is planning to take care of the
Yeah.
football, and unless you're punching out, it's going to be tough to get it away. So, like, I think they still played excellent in the Wisconsin game, but they didn't get a takeaway. So, it is what it is there. But I thought really from the starting with the UCLA game, I thought the run defense, I believe the UCLA game was the game Cody Lindenberg's brace came off his elbow. And it's like from that moment on, the run defense just tightened up. They were kind of okay here and there, but would still, I mean, Iowa happened, and early on, our run defense still struggled. I think that was pretty evident. I mean, USC even ran the ball decently on us, but went away from it. And we were able to get the dub there, obviously. But I thought UCLA is when they really took a noticeable step forward, then hit the bye week, and then came back, and the run defense was much improved. I believe they finished here. I had it up. Yeah, they finished with the number 21 run defense in the country, which from being last in the Big Ten last year, that's was not something I saw coming at all. Um, and then you go to total points, top 10 in the country at 18.3 points per game. So from the increase in takeaways they were getting to the the lack of points they were giving up, and then also just plugging holes, like you said, not giving up as many big plays. I was thoroughly impressed with Corey Heatherman because the personnel was pretty much the same. So he it wasn't like a bunch of brand new guys were coming in. Joining us is Spencer. Spencer, thank you for making this one. That was a surprise. But yeah, like we lost Tyler Newbin, you gained Coy, and then all of the rest was pretty much the same. You got Ethan Robinson in that corner, but your front seven was the same, and our linebackers were brutal last year. And by the end of the year, they were doing their job. They weren't a liability anymore. So I'm really happy with Heatherman's first year in the job. Shuddy, do you have anything to add to Corey Heatherman and the defense this year?
I thought that the defense did tremendous this year, fellas. Sorry I'm late. In-laws left
You're
earlier than I
good.
thought, so I'm glad I could make it. Yeah, I thought that, especially at the linebacker position, I thought that it was a little slow start, particularly if you look at Cody Lindenberg. I thought that, being the veteran on that defense coming back at the linebacker position, at first I can remember me being a little more critical on him, kind of starting slow. But I felt like by that UCLA game, he really started to pick it up, and he was great back. Now he's probably going to go to the NFL. Very happy for him. But additionally, I just think that, you know, I think I'm most impressed and happy with the defensive line. I feel like we've been saying it for years how it'd be nice to have a really dominant defensive line. And we just saw just how dominant I felt like they were. Probably the most dominant we've seen since probably the Jerry Kill days. Uh, Devin Eastern, I feel like on this podcast we can't give him enough credit. Probably the best guy there. Ja Joyner, it looks like he's just being held every time that he rushes the passer. He
Yeah.
just gives so much effort every time, and he's just fun to watch, And I can't say enough about Strigow. And then we have a lot of new guys coming up. A lot of guys that maybe didn't play enough. Forgetting his name, I'm sorry. Came from LSU.
Jackson Howard.
Howard,
Yeah.
thank you. I mean, there's a lot of good guys on this defense that are coming up. Secondary, obviously, Coy. I don't need to really reiterate probably what you both have already said about him. He's just a tremendous athlete. Wally's been here for many years, just kind of stood on his own. Yeah, you look at the other guys too. I mean, overall, I feel like they've improved throughout the season defensively, and got to give credit to Heatherman for that.
Yeah. I think it speaks volumes when, Coyle comes out and says that it wasn't just Rutgers that was calling him to try and get him to be their defensive coordinator. It was other schools and other conferences calling too. So what he did was noticeable, pretty much with the same personnel. It's great that he wants to stay here for a little longer at least, and we got him that pay raise. So excited to see what he can do in the future. Hoping we can get a little bit more athletic personnel-wise at that linebacker position. But we'll see. Another year in the system, I think we'll see big improvements there. Let's go over to the offensive side of the ball. Greg Harbaugh and PJ, because I think this one more than anything, you got to allow PJ to get your criticism or props, whichever one you're giving, just because he does kind of chime in more often on this side of the ball, whether it be to play things conservative or not. For me, I think the offense overall was a little better. Like if you just look at the passing yards, right? So this year, Max Brosmer, you went out and found a stud. Your passing yards per game, 215, which doesn't sound crazy. It's 77th in the nation, but last year we were in the 140 range, 143, I believe. So big improvement there. The running game did take a dip, right? Like it was really hit and miss on the year. And I think that shows, at the statistics. Last year we were averaging about 160 yards rushing a game. This year it was down in the 115 yards per game, which was 108th in the country. So a little bit of a mixed bag. I think Brosmer bailed us out a lot and was really responsible for moving us down the field a lot of the time. For me, the thing I'm most critical about for this offense was it was just too hard to consistently move the ball. We really lacked in the explosive plays. What was the stat they showed up against the Wisconsin game? Like, was it we were like bottom 4, I believe, in the country in plays over 30 yards. So at least among the Power
Yeah.
4 schools. So that's the big area for improvement for me. Now, PJ deserves credit when he got a little bit more willing to adjust. We did throw the ball more when we couldn't run, which is good to see. He did go for the kill shot against USC on 4th down, which is something he probably wouldn't have done in years past. So he evolved in that sense, and that's credit to that offensive side of the ball. I didn't feel as excited about the offense. I felt like a lot of other fans were just online this year. I don't know. What were your guys' thoughts on the offense?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you said, a lot of it came down to the run game and the offensive line's protections, and that was what was. I mean, more of the offensive line was going to dictate how the offense operated.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a little bit obvious, but it was so inconsistent that some games it would look almost perfect, and we'd have the run
Illinois.
game clicking. Yeah,
Yeah.
Darius. I mean, looking at Darius's game log, he's either running for over 120, 130 yards or 40. Like there
Yeah.
was no in between. And it's games like you can look at those numbers and it's clear to see. Well, offensive line probably didn't play that well that game. We just couldn't get we couldn't get in a rhythm. We had a solid passing attack, but when you can't, set it up with the run game, you don't have time to let the plays progress, then it all kind of goes out the window. Then you really have nothing. Whereas in past years, when we were just running the football all the time, I mean, you can
Yeah.
do that
You only
and just
needed to connect on
rely.
one deep shot for that
Exactly,
case. Yeah.
exactly. And I think a lot of it too. I mean, we had some pretty dominant offensive lines, so it worked to an extent. The ceiling was just really low. This year, it felt like the ceiling for the offense was really high, and at times we saw us reach it, but the floor got lowered a lot too when the offensive line played.
Yeah.
Whether it was scheme, fatigue, injury. I mean, there's a lot of things that went on during the season, and the line got shuffled around quite a bit. We have a new center, but it's like it all kind of evened out. I mean, overall, I liked the direction the offense is going. I think the scheme overall it just felt more nuanced and more aggressive, but the execution just wasn't always there, and that was really the.
Yeah.
And it's even more disappointing, right, when you see the highs and then you don't always get it.
The offensive line is going to be the biggest mystery of this season.
Right.
You got Arianti Ursary, who's projected to be a late first or early second round pick. Quinn Carroll might get drafted as well, and then Tyler Cooper's going to get signed somewhere. And you were returning 4 out of 5 starters from the year prior who had a pretty solid, at least average offensive line. So, yeah, the up and down thing was weird. I like Callahan, our offensive line coach. I feel like he's done a pretty good job at developing guys here, so I'm not gonna like hit the panic button on him or anything. Yeah, you're right. It was a lot of the O line execution for sure. I still don't think there's enough vertical shots taken in this offense, and I know that that's obviously easier to do when the offensive line's clicking. I don't know. It's like nobody's ever open. There's like a lot of contested catches, and I don't know. It was also difficult. But Shuddy, what were your thoughts on the offense?
Yeah, I think before I kind of get to the critiques, what I'll say is, firstly, Brosmer, I feel like was just it's a breath of fresh air. Finally we saw a quarterback that could, you know, hold his own. We tried the eighth and experiment that didn't really work, and over PJ Fleck's tenure, besides the 2019 season with Tanner Morgan, we haven't really seen a quarterback sling it the way that Brosmer had. So, that's a 5-year stretch. So finally, we kind of got to see something like that. And it was encouraging to see, PJ Fleck was willing to throw the football. I feel like in the past few years, we've just kind of relied on the run, literally punishing all of our running backs, running them in the dirt. Poor Mo,
Yeah.
NFL might not even be a thing with it for him anymore because he's a 30-year-old essentially. But I digress. Anyway, you know, and also I feel like offensively, PJ Fleck, and you mentioned it, Kurt, the willingness to take those chances. The fourth down against USC to put the game away. I felt like this Duke Mayo Bowl, there was a fourth down. It was fake, and they did the pop pass, right? That was a
Yeah.
pretty cool play. Like that's uncharacteristic of PJ. So I thought that there was some evolution in PJ's gameplay. However, when you look at the Gopher offense traditionally, running was not that good. Um, you have Darius Taylor, who was a standout freshman last year, right? And we bring in Marcus Major, who was a great back too from Oklahoma. Um, you average 111 rushing yards per game. That is the lowest that PJ Fleck has had by about 50 yards during his whole time here, which, when that's half the field per game, I mean, that's a significant amount.
Yeah.
15th in the Big Ten rushing, 116th nationally in the rushing offense. That is not something that we're accustomed to seeing this Gopher team do. And I'm not putting that on Darius Taylor. I think it started with the offensive line, which I thought was surprising, fellas. We had 4 returners coming back from that line, and they just couldn't really get it going. I felt like probably after that UCLA game, that was like the game where I felt like things were starting to gel a little bit more maybe. But even after that, I felt like they didn't really get clicking in the way that they could. But,
Yeah.
something like that was just tough to see. On another high note, I did like how we had that 1-2 punch at receiver with Daniel Jackson and Elijah Spencer. Jackson can't we can't say enough about him. He's going to be totally missed. And Spencer, was a great wide receiver as well. And Darius Taylor just showed how athletic of a back he is because he was, one of our best receivers coming out of the
Yeah.
running back position. So, although we kind of stretched the playbook a little bit and saw a little different things, I felt like running was a little disappointing this year. So overall, I'd probably give it an average score, but I like to see how we expanded the playbook overall.
Yeah. And, dumping it off to Darius Taylor is basically an extension of the run game. So
Yeah.
that was a little helpful. But yeah, it was like we took some steps forward in areas we definitely were begging to, right? Throwing the ball more often, getting the running back involved. And PJ showed a little bit more aggressiveness in the moments we've mentioned. I just think it's got to it was a good first step. I want to see it happen even more now. Not necessarily to throw the ball even more, but just the aggressiveness, right? Go back to that Penn State game, and I just think about how we threw the ball to get into Penn State's territory twice. Then we ran it 3 straight times and settled for field goals each time. And after we just thrown the ball to get to where we were, so he still has it in him a little bit. Just that nature to be like, all right, they're really athletic up front, so let's just play it safe and kick our field goal and get our points here, which to an extent, I can understand a little bit, but then I mean, later in the game, we're trying to throw a backwards pass to our left tackle from the 10-yard line against this super fast defense, and we're expecting our left tackle to run 10 yards into the end zone. That didn't make sense to me. So, and again, we're nitpicking, like it's in the moment. Coaches make bad calls, so I don't want them gone or anything. I just think there's still meat on the bone for what I want this offense to continue to develop in. And I think if you're Drake Lindsay, right, like a little bit of a different skill set than Brosmer. Like we don't know how he's going to handle all the short to intermediate stuff where Brosmer was excellent at. To be honest, like he just thrived at dinking and dunking it down the field to move this offense. Where we know that Lindsay has a little bit of the bigger arm, so it would be nice whether you got to change out the receiver room, which they've already brought in different athletes, or just get the offensive line to just play better in general, to be able to stretch it more vertically and not force your young quarterback to have to make all those 5 to 10 to 15-yard throws every time to consistently move your offense down the field. Bigger chunk plays, just it's less plays you have to execute, right? If you can score a 40-yard touchdown, you take it because it's less plays you have to execute in close to the goal line. So I think that's going to be a key point going forward, and a point that they struggled a little bit this year. But again, we did see new facets of the offense that we hadn't before. So, like you guys covered. So, yeah. And as always, we can't move on without talking about special teams here, fellas. Special teams. I honestly I'll say this. I like our coverage units a lot. Punt coverage, I like. Kickoff coverage, I like. They've done a good job. I think the punting issues have been personnel wise. I think you need a better punter, to be frank. Like he had some good punts, he had some not great punts, and there's a couple games in a row where he was really just not flipping the field at all and getting off like these 32-yard punts when you're trying to pin them deep, and it just didn't do you anything. So he had a few good punts this year. It wasn't like his worst year, I don't think, but that's where I think the punting issues come along. I think Coy sparked their return game to an extent, but I still think there's times, especially on kickoff return, where it's like the guys just aren't picking up blocks. I feel like there's people there right away. So, I don't really know what else can be done. Maybe it's a first year thing for Legashevsky. I forget his name. something like that. So maybe it gets better as it goes on here. But what were your thoughts? And of course, it didn't help that Dragon was struggling a little bit on kick in, but that's tough to really put on the coordinator and the execution of things that way. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on the special teams?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, pretty much hit the nail on the head. Like,
Yeah, it's a mixed
punting and
bag.
kicking struggled. Coverage units were good. I can't remember. We didn't have any punts blocked, did we? Maybe was there one? I don't know why.
I don't
One
think.
sticks out of my head. Of like we ran on the
Oh,
field late.
Michigan, they blocked one.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was a weird one where like it was rushed and just not
Yep.
protected well. But so I mean that's you see college football teams struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah.
So it should be one of those things you take for granted, but not everyone can. So I guess as a fan of a team who really struggles on special teams, we'll take that. Having Coy as a kick returner, punt returner is great. I wonder how much the new guy, Logan Loya, might take over some of that role, just having more experience with it, maybe saving Coy. That's probably a topic for a different show. But it was, again, interesting, though, that Coy only got his opportunity after an injury.
Yeah.
So I guess that just goes back to, like, it's not just the guy. I mean, it's the
Maybe we won't see Coy at all next year. Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. So that's where, I feel like special teams, we're just not utilizing the guys that we have maybe to the best of their abilities. But
I think it was better though this year. I really do. Like than years past. You look at look at the Penn State game.
In the return game, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the blocks in the Penn State game too. Block extra point, block punt. So it was like flashes. I think just a little bit more consistency out of your punter and kicker.
Right.
And there's not a lot of people that return kicks for touchdowns, but it doesn't seem like I don't know the last time we've done it, but
the last thing I have is just stink. If I have to pick one area of special teams that I want us to be good at is just field goal kicking because it's the only one that can really consistently get you points. And when you have the Big Ten kicker of the year and he misses some critical kicks, and it's tough. I mean, I think he's still a great kicker. I think he has a great leg, but it's tough when you have the expectation of, well, we still have Dragon, and then what's going on, Dragon?
I mean, the team finished 7-5 regular season. They could have easily been, 10-2, 9-3. Like it was that close of a year. So these critical execution, whether it be kicks, punting, and on the offense and defense too, right? They went through their ups and downs in each game as well. So, but yeah, it all just plays into a factor of these outcomes of games. Shouldie, anything? We kind of took a lot of the talking points there, but
you all pretty much nailed it all on the head. All I'll say is, I feel like they have improved, but we're talking about it's probably the worst special teams Minnesota Gophers have ever seen prior to this year. I'm not saying this to joke around. Like it was that bad. The special teams was pretty bad these past few years. Coy finally brought the ball back, probably for the first time since that return against Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's
when
what
we
it felt
finally
like.
brought the axe back home. It's been that long. That's not a joke. Finally we're trying to return the ball on a kickoff. At least he's, and Coy, he's a freshman. He made some mistakes. He muffed one in the game against Virginia Tech. He did take some kickoffs probably when he shouldn't have and kind of got tackled inside the 20 or whatever. But like at least he's willing to do that and give it a chance. And he probably won't have to return the rest of his career, unfortunately. But it was good to see him at least try something.
For the record, I think he will be the guy next year.
I hope so. Crawford, it was a great career. Thank you for your service, but I think we're all ready to. I mean, here's the thing. You look at Iowa, They are atrocious on offense, right? But their special teams flips the field, and they're good for 9 wins at least a season. The
Well,
Gophers
because
could
they put
easily
effort
do
into it.
that.
They put effort into
They
their
put effort
punter
into
and
it.
their punting
That's the
and
difference,
kicking
though.
game.
You're a perennial team that could potentially make noise. Well, it's harder now with the restructuring Big Ten, but a West winner every year simply because of special teams. I don't know why PJ hasn't figured it out, but this year was good. And then Kesich, yeah, just the regression was hard to watch. You said it, Kurt. Could have won some more games if he made the first game of the year against North Carolina. You drill that bad boy. Guess what? You win another game. I
Yeah.
mean, but I get it. Kicking's hard. I could never do it. We appreciate your services, but I think we're just ready to move on from it. And yeah,
It'll be interesting who wins those spots. It's probably the most underrated talking point right now for next year is our punter and kicker next year because they're both going to be new guys and
let's
not.
say just do campus tryouts or something. Anything.
Well,
We've
we
got the
brought in
top
that.
recruits,
We
right?
got one of our top recruits was like a 4 or 5 star kicker that's playing baseball as well. So
Hopefully he can.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. Think we got some options. Okay, so it's a kind of a unique year, right? A very entertaining year. Like a lot of the games were super close, nail biting games. Couple nice wins. Dominated Wisconsin, dominated Maryland. Those were nice and easy on cruise control. But a lot of nail biters. Some that didn't go our way, some that went our way. Obviously, finished 7-5. So the over under from Vegas 4.5 years. We finished 7-5. We've covered all 3 aspects of the game. What would you give this grade of a season and why? Just to sum it all up for the listeners. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Shooty. We'll start with
I
you.
guess to break it all
Oh,
down.
sorry. I was gonna let
Oh my,
Spencer start.
did I freeze?
No, you didn't freeze. I was just
My
gonna.
bad.
That was late on my part. I was gonna let Shooty go first, just because I feel like I've been serving him the last couple.
Yeah, go ahead, Spence.
Oh, this is tough. B minus. I'm just gonna say B minus. No, and maybe I'm just a little facetious because I thought that the Gophers did a lot better than I was anticipating, to be honest. I thought that the Wisconsin game, for example, preseason, I'm comparing these to my preseason expectations. They dominated against Wisconsin. They kept most of the games really close. And I was just impressed with that. Um, it's just the little things, right? Like the trenches on the offensive side of the ball to regress like that, up front. That was tough. We weren't running it as effectively. You know, Special teams was an improvement, but it still wasn't all that great, particularly kicking the ball for extra points and field goals. But ultimately, I thought that they did well. I thought that they showed improvement throughout the year. Quarterback position was great. Um, you beat one rival out of the 4, which is nice. I wish you would have snuck maybe another one out of that, but ultimately you got one done, and that's great. Um, yeah, B minus.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Max, what's your grade?
Well, I guess group by group, offensively, I feel like I'd probably give them a C plus, just a hair over average. We had the A's, we had the F's, but there was
Yeah,
going to be one more A than an F, so I'll give them a C plus. Special teams, D plus, to be nice. I don't know. And
it's tough when you're missing field goals, so it's tough
it
to give them
is.
a
It
better
just
grade.
it just stands out.
Yeah,
And yeah, defensively, I feel like defensively I'd go A minus. I mean, just
yeah,
solid, not perfect, but solid.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, overall, I think the season for me, I guess, pretty much met expectations. At the end of the day, I think I'd give the entire team, the entire season, a B grade.
Nice.
We left some things we left some meat on the bone, but won some games that maybe shouldn't have. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you guys nailed the record, by the way, preseason 7-5. Didn't have the exact games, but you both said 7-5. So props to you guys. And before I say my grade, this just because I'm giving it a C plus, and here's why. And just because I give it a C plus doesn't mean I didn't thoroughly enjoy this Gopher season. Like we've covered, a lot of the games were super competitive, and we won a lot of fun games. So I very much enjoyed it. I think though, just looking back at it all, when you had a chance to beat Michigan on the road in a year that Michigan's down, the North Carolina game where you should have won that game but didn't, it's like crap. I'm not like faulting us for the loss to Iowa. I just think that was the defense's biggest disappointment, and it was early, and they really they didn't tackle well, and it was just really we were missing Wally, and they somehow used that as a huge weakness for our run defense by keep going after that side of the field. But um, to just kind of come out so flat that second half, like that weighs it down. USC, great win. UCLA, another great win that people were really upset for being close at half. And turned out that UCLA was actually an okay team and like beat a lot of good teams this year as well. So hold off on that one. And then just the game coming out totally flat against Rutgers. Like that fourth quarter against Rutgers also just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But then they almost get it done against Penn State, right? So it was just ebbed and flowed. I just needed more consistency at the end of the day, particularly of the offensive line, the play calling, the aggressive mindset. Just needed a little bit more. A lot of missed kicks, but I had us going 8-4. We were nearly had it a few times. Finished 7-5. So I'm going C plus, but I am optimistic of where we're going with who we got back and all that. You're returning a lot of guys up front on the defensive line. Yeah, the offensive line's going to have some new faces, but they grabbed some nice pieces in the portal. And listen, we all thought the offensive line was going to be the strength of this team this year. And how much worse could it get? You know what I mean? With the caliber they have coming back, I just don't see the offensive line being worse than what they got this year. So, looking forward to that. But yeah, so my final grade on the year would be a C plus. Outing chimes in here. We're missing the game. We know we're trying to get this done here really quick. So, Shreddy, the game just started, but who do you got between Notre Dame and Penn State?
I got the Irish winning this game, and in our personal, we have a group chat, and in our group chat, we did kind of bowl mania. I had the Irish winning the national
Do
championship.
you really?
I do.
Wow. That's not happening.
Yeah, but you got to stick with your guns. So I got the Irish, and I do have Ohio State beating Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, regardless of what the lines are, I don't know them. I'm just going to go with those two.
All right. I don't have the Ohio State one up in front of me, to be honest. I think they were 6. I thought it was 6 points, Ohio State. So, me and Max already picked. He took the Irish as well. I took Penn State, who's getting 2. I believe it was 2 points. I took Penn State. Ohio State, Texas. Yeah, I think Ohio State wins. I think they've kind of basically at this point they're rolling like they were 10 years ago at their last national championship team, where it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who they're playing. They're going to outscore you and just kind of bully you eventually. So, yeah, I got Notre Dame, Penn State in the Natty, and I got Ohio State winning it all. And I have Ohio State covering as well against Texas.
Yeah, I've also got Ohio State covering. I think Texas is a weird one. Like they're sneaky. They can score in bunches. They can score fast, but then they can also.
And their defense is good. Like
it is
at
good
times, yeah.
But then also Arizona State can just quickly score on them. It's like,
yeah.
What? So I feel like a team against Ohio State when they're probably the best team in the country, and it's clicking right now too. Like that's just a scary combination. So I take Ohio State, and I take Ohio State over Notre Dame in the national championship. It's a great helmet game.
Yeah, it is. All right, guys, that'll do it for Sky U Pod. Our last episode covering the 2024 season for the Gophers. It was a great year. 7-5, a lot of fun games. I hope Gopher fans realize this, that like we were the reason Brett Bielema didn't make the playoffs this year. That win at Illinois, their only home loss of the year, was a great game. You dominated the Badgers. They're in free fall. They might cut the program just how other fans are reacting.
We also made you all money a few times too.
That's right. The Sky U Pod parlay had a few times. So like and subscribe to the show. we'll be back when we can. We're kind of busy right now in life and whatnot, but we're gonna try and get on here when we can, talk portal updates, whatnot, what we're excited for. Maybe like a game ranking of the year as well at some point or something like that too. Let us know what you want to hear about this offseason. But as always, guys, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your support. Appreciate all the subscribers on YouTube and everywhere you listen. So thank you. Go Gophers. Enjoy the football game tonight.